what's sort of clear is that it's a sort of desire that the market, whatever we want to call it, has, right? Like capital efficiency is something that people strive for, investors strive for. And these are all like things that I think are necessary for really the Cosmos ecosystem to have like, all the tooling available for the big adoption, Polygon is sort of the example where this has worked very well, right? They're like the kings of BD in the blockchain ecosystem. And
welcome to the Bare Metal Podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Bare Metal Podcast. As is customary these last few episodes, I'd like to invite everyone to come to the Gateway Conference in Prague, June 3rd to 5th. It's going to be really exciting. There's Prague Blockchain Week, lots of conferences happening from D-Side to ETH Prague. So there'll be a lot of other places you can have a look. And obviously, Gateway is premier developer-focused conference, which will discuss all things Cosmos, current and upcoming. Today, I've got with me Felix Lutsch from Chorus One. Welcome, Felix.
Thanks for having me. Very excited to be here.
So, let's start off. Chorus One, big validator. I guess everybody already knows you guys, but I'd be interested in the origin stories. Can you introduce sort of when you joined Chorus? How did Chorus get started?
Yeah, totally. Happy to. Yeah. So I actually joined Chorus in early 2018. So this is shortly after Chorus One was founded by Brian and Meher. So Brian and Meher actually were already in the crypto ecosystem since a few years at that time, working for Brian for Tendermint. So sort of in the Cosmos ecosystem already, but or Tendermint initially had also like other chains, like I think Eris Industries was like one of the Monax, so enterprise blockchain at some time, and then sort of congregated to launch the Cosmos network that we know today, so the Cosmos Hub. And Meher was already active in the community too, and they met and realized that a lot of the networks that were kind of being coming out at that time would like have this proof of stake consensus model, like Cosmos being actually one of the first, with Tendermint being used, so a BFT mechanism, and staking as like a sort of crypto economic security, securing the network, like one of the first networks that did that. But there were also a lot of others like Tezos and Polkadot thinking in the same direction. And all of these had like this role of the validator at that time, probably like they called it differently, right? Like Tezos was Baker. Polkadot had like a bunch of different names. But essentially the concept was the same, that you would need to run like some sort of infrastructure that has like keys where the stake towards, and then you're sort of part of that ecosystem and you're earning the rewards for securing those networks. And that's really like just the idea that there could be a company built around that like provides that infrastructure that Brian and Meher had early. And I personally was sort of just wanting to work in crypto. I was following it for a while when the Ethereum white paper came out. I have a finance background, so I was like a master's student at the time still. And then I wrote my thesis actually about like comparing different consensus protocols. So both like PBFT without actually any crypto economic security, and also proof of work and proof of stake, and sort of try to explain the differences, since at that time it was very common that people were thinking, oh, it's blockchain, not Bitcoin, so basically they wanted to use some sort of permissioned version. And I looked at that in my master thesis and gained a lot of knowledge through that, and sort of was looking for jobs through different portals, and was lucky enough to stumble upon Chorus and started working there as a research analyst. Initially, just sort of researching how could this business look, what networks are interesting, where could we get involved, writing content, and it developed into a lot of things, which I'm sure we can cover a bit today. But basically, helping grow the business into what it is today, helping launch other networks together with other validators, right? Sharing back our expertise, providing like governance and research on various topics that we've done over the years, and building a team of now we're 50 people, and wow, lots of like people staking with us across like many networks. So it's been quite a journey. So I'm happy to get into like more of it.
Yeah. So Tendermint white paper, that reminds me, I'm very new to crypto compared to you guys. But the very first white paper I found online when I was Googling, like, PBFT, like, what's that, was the 10-minute white paper. And I read that and I thought, okay, this is some really interesting tech. We need to go study this. And then, I went and got a job in crypto. So I like this sort of confluence. But back to you guys. You said, you started right around proof of stake was getting established. You were there at the origins. And you started obviously with the validator business, but then you guys also spread out and, you guys do investing now. So how did that come about? Were you just managing a treasure and thinking, okay, so what do we do with this? Or is this an ecosystem play? How do you guys think about the VC division?
It's quite interesting. I think, we are bootstrapped. So initially when we started, it was just basically funded by the founders and sort of like the initial rewards, some grants from foundations that we did some things for, that what we did initially a bit more like software development kind of stuff, since like really staking rewards were very minor at the very start. But we, through the nature of the business in validation, I think is that you're already looking at a lot of projects, right? Like different proof of stake networks. So, and you're sort of deciding which to onboard, which is essentially a due diligence question that is already very similar to a venture investment due diligence, where you sort of, instead of investing money, you're sort of investing the capital of your work, like force, right? Like who has to onboard. We have to maintain this network. We have to engage with the community there, which is kind of like very aligned already. And then, being in the space for a while, our founders are also like sort of already active in the ecosystem investing. And I think everyone that's in crypto sort of is a little bit of an investor, right? Because they're like,
holding
tokens, right? Like I think initially in the ICO phase, it was much more, right? You can get into everything. Everything's super open. And I think that model switched a bit in 2018, 19 after the first crash, where, these SAFTs came around and projects were more conservative in how they raised their funds and went back to like sort of the classic VC model. And, around that time, actually also staking revenues became higher. And from our engagement with early networks, for example, also Solana or like some other projects, we actually found ourselves in a position that we had quite a lot of a treasury and big revenues. And we were like thinking, okay, given we're already, involved in these networks and we have this portfolio approach, because you're already earning like tokens in different network tokens, right? So you earn the revenues in different network tokens. So you sort of accumulate naturally some sort of portfolio, but you don't really maybe control exactly how it goes. But then you take a second look at it and you're like, okay, maybe it makes more sense to sort of shift some resources into other networks where we want to grow. That might be like we just buy the token, but it might also mean we invest like more resources into it, like operationally. But so at that point we were like, okay, now there's a lot of these early stage investments where we sort of came across just being in the space. So for example, one of them being Lido, where we were early to, because Lido was looking for validators to run the initial version. We had a lot of expertise in liquid staking too, so got approached to participate in that. And then ultimately we were like, okay, this is probably not going to be the last time that something like this happens, right? Where we essentially dedicated a percentage of our treasury to a dedicated venture fund that will then sort of be run and like looking for new opportunities that are aligned with our operations. So really we are investing in things that have some synergies with our core business. That might be just like new networks that have a staking function, or some sort of middleware that helps staking be adopted more, or like sort of tooling that pushes forward the proof of stake ecosystem. So yeah, that's sort of the history of that. And we've been running that since like about a year probably now, and have been going quite well so far. Yeah.
Okay, to cap this off, like, do you guys have any in-house like software developers? Do you actually, build out your own stuff, or do you have some contributions, you make to blockchains? How does it look from the software side?
Yeah, so we do have like we had like different things over the years. So obviously we have like the DevOps side, which is probably more just, running the infrastructure. And then we have like a sort of role that is more infrastructure software engineer, and like some normal software engineers we also had on the team. We over the time had like different software development projects, mostly from grants initially, especially when staking business wasn't as like lucrative or like as established, or you couldn't really do as much, where we're also looking at like different paths in the ecosystem, because we weren't so sure how the staking market is going to play out. And we sort of looked into interoperability. So we worked on some of the bridging to Ethereum from Tendermint. So like one of the first Tendermint in Solidity code bases from us. We did like Lido on Solana. So we sort of expanded the protocol from there. Ultimately, we sort of cut down on some of these initiatives, and now most of the software engineering work that we do goes into like building out our staking product. Maybe actually going back, we did initially also have one project to kind of show you the rewards from staking on Cosmos and a few other networks. So it was like sort of this dashboard called Anthem. Maybe someone remembers. We were a bit early with that. It was very hard to get the data out. So like also a big problem in the space, right? It's like, how do you actually get the data, like especially historical data in Cosmos?
The perennial RPC problem.
Yeah. And we tried to tackle that. We didn't really have like much experience or like knowledge there. We just sort of saw the need. We made like also a bunch of mistakes there, to be fully honest, and we're a bit early and sort of shelved that. But now over time, as the market matures and also the tooling around data infrastructure especially matured with other projects like the Graph or generally like I guess RPC providers providing more help, we focused ourselves more to sort of bring such a product back where our stakers or our delegators could go directly stake with us from like a API that we build and get the rewards from that. So this is more an institutional product that we're sort of building out right now to support our delegators there, and that's still like probably the biggest software development project we're doing right now.
Okay. You touched on Lido and liquid staking. Since you guys have been around for a while, we have to remember, proof of stake hasn't been around for that long. So if we take a step back and look at a wider view, like where do you feel proof of stake is now? Is it established since, and if you look back at these origins, can you talk about like, has it come a long way? Do you feel like the market, the security market is sort of better now?
Yeah, definitely. I think, for a long time, I think there's definitely been some sort of part of the community that did believe like proof of stake would come about, but you didn't really have much precedent since it wasn't there. Like now we have like a few networks that have been running for multiple years with like billions of dollars of value secured and like large applications, especially since Ethereum switched to proof of stake, right? We sort of have more of a proven thing that this actually works. And, you can also see it just in the numbers of like sort of proof of stake dominance, let's say. If you look at staking rewards, also shout out to the team there who have like tracked this for a while, sort of seeing how much more of the sort of market cap of crypto overall runs on proof of stake, and it's like a growing number, right? And I think that's gonna continue. Excited to see like a lot of innovation in that space too, and I think we could probably dive a little bit into what has changed over time in the space. And
let's touch on this in a bit. Let's stay on this topic for a while. So you mentioned like Ethereum as switching to proof of stake was a major event. What about the very first liquid staking? So I actually learned about liquid staking from a report you guys wrote. Right? There's a report on liquid staking and sort of what role it has in the ecosystem. So you guys were pretty early there. So can you recount sort of how liquid staking got started on Ethereum? Were you guys around that? What was your role in the whole business?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's been interesting to see like being there early in the staking space as a validator. You sort of have a different view on the space than many of the protocol designers that would like build their staking protocols. from a different perspective. So often the goal was like, how do we get like the most decentralized network, and sort of trying to set up some incentives for that. And especially in Ethereum, was a big goal to, have like home stakers be able to participate, since I guess a lot of the chains generally are limited if they do use PBFT by the communication overhead that you have between the nodes. So you end up maybe having only a set of 100 or something validators, and that was like not sufficient for Ethereum. So they've been focusing a lot to how can we increase like the participation, but also like how do we avoid pooling. I guess that was sort of their idea, like, oh, we don't want to have this delegation model that Cosmos has because that's dangerous and sort of threatening to the network. I mean, the problem with this that I think they didn't see, or like that wasn't as clear, is that you can always pool the funds through like custody, like centralized exchange, and the delegation feature actually is a very nice invention that like Cosmos and Tezos were using, that sort of encodes this relationship already in the protocol, so you don't have an incentive to do it out of the protocol. And I think not having that kind of brought about the existence of liquid staking in Ethereum, because you had to build a model like this.
So it definitely reduces transparency. If you're doing what delegators are in Cosmos in protocol, you're doing it out of protocol. So you'll have multiple validators that are tied to you, but nobody knows because they aren't really linkable inside the protocol. Totally on board. I feel like this hasn't really worked out super well for Ethereum in my opinion. But back to the liquid staking idea. So
yeah.
What's your view on liquid staking today? I mean, on one side, people say there's a lot of capital efficiency that arises from this. You can stake your tokens with it, use them in DeFi. On the other hand, there's also an increase in leverage, right? Because the same tokens are being leveraged across like various DeFi plays. So I've heard various opinions around whether that's healthy, how much is healthy. Do you guys have any thinking around this?
Yeah, it's a very interesting topic. I think, what's sort of clear is that it's a sort of desire that the market, whatever we want to call it, has, right? Like capital efficiency is something that people strive for, investors strive for, and like it is like a force that you need to sort of consider. And I think that obviously drives a lot of adoption for liquid staking, or it's like sort of the bull case for liquid staking, that everyone will want like more yield and be more capital efficient. I do definitely also like subscribe to that idea to some extent, and that's also why we were interested in liquid staking, because we knew, okay, this is probably gonna come and it's gonna like significantly shift how this market looks, right? Because now you have sort of this other entity, the liquid staking protocol, that dictates where the stake is going. It might not even be actually a protocol, right? It could just be like an entity or like a centralized exchange, and sort of, I guess, that impacts the dynamics. And then, I think that, depending on who is like controlling that entity, like, so sort of if it's a DAO or whatnot, it can be like bad for the ecosystem, or actually also can be good, right? If they do it well, the distribution of stake, maybe like well in the sense that it's actually decentralizing the network more, it's giving participants a chance that maybe in the free market wouldn't get so much stake, then actually I think it can be like very beneficial. So I do think there is like a lot of nuances to liquid staking there. And
in some sense, if somebody's doing like technical due diligence on these validators and actually finding out, oh, there are good players over here, but they don't have any funds to market themselves, they have no way to build their own reputation because they're just focusing on the infrastructure, then I totally agree that the liquid staking protocols do have a role in actually helping those validators get more market share and establish themselves. I would totally understand. So a question for you: what do you think is going to happen to the amount of Ether that's liquid staked on Ethereum when I believe the Shanghai version goes live, which allows unstaking? Because in my mind, a big part of the product market fit for liquid staking wasn't necessarily you can go and stake it somewhere else, but you can actually get out of your position.
Yeah.
which wasn't possible in Ethereum. It's actually still not possible in Ethereum, right? It's going to be soon. So what do you think will happen to the liquid staking market if you can now go ahead and unstake, actual ETH?
Yeah, it's the big question, and I think it's like a lot of the staking provider, anyone in Ethereum, sort of likes to think about this right now and sort of builds their own strategies and products around this. And I think there's also like other factors actually impacting it, like for example the SECs or like the regulatory environment right now that sort of also impacts the centralized, let's say, staking solutions. And then, so I think from that perspective, or like if we just purely look at the event on staking, I think obviously it sort of de-risks Ethereum staking at large. So I would expect that more people will stake their ETH, since right now we're still like around 20%. So I think over time it will probably not be like instantly, but over time it might like increase the growth of Ethereum being staked, or just generally the portion of ETH being staked. And then in terms of like, will it go to liquid staking, or will like liquid staking, I guess, lose market share or win? I'm actually also it's already very, it has already a very big market share, I guess. I think it will probably, this is like probably more speculative. I don't really know, but I think it potentially gives room for other staking methods that now sort of have, it's the playing field is a little bit more level, right? That sort of liquidity premium is not that much there anymore. So you might like stake directly or ETH with a staking provider, or even run the home validator and be able to withdraw. So you might be like more enticed to do that as a ETH holder.
Right.
Obviously, you still have that limitation of like 32 ETH, which is quite a lot. But I think there's like also other solutions in the works that maybe help you achieve that without having to, or like needing to have a liquid staking token and everything that comes with it.
Yeah, while we're in Ethereum, there are interesting developments around staking. One particular one we chatted about earlier was EigenLayer. So I'm curious, like, what your take is on EigenLayer as a piece of tech. You think is it a good thing for Ethereum that you can now use your staking tokens to secure various target sort of infrastructure or even like different projects?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I think it's interesting. Direction, if you think about it, there was often a question for any token actually is like, how do you accrue value? How do you sort of create a business model for the network participants? And often the solution, or used to be, that you say you have this like main chain, and then, or like it's essentially the security token of the network, right? Like, and a lot of the ideas kind of went along the lines of like, let's say, sharding, right? Like that, you have on Ethereum, that used to be the model that, there's one, the beacon chain, right? That's still there. And then there's these shards where the validators get shuffled across, and we sort of scale by like shuffling them across more shards. And there's basically all these separate blockchains, but they're all secured by the same token. And that's also the Polkadot model, right? And that was actually always also the problem that people had with Cosmos. Cosmos doesn't have this, right? And like people were like, oh, Atom is not a good investment because it doesn't capture the value. But what I would say is that, like EigenLayer essentially sort of turns this a bit around and like makes this, instead of being like top down, that, the ecosystem says, look, this is the token that secures everything. We're like sort of building like a bottom up thing where people can opt into like running multiple services, or like sharding, essentially running multiple services and getting more yield, but also more risk from it, in a way, through like opting into it instead of like being forced to from that perspective. And I think that's really the innovation there. And it also came, like, for example, some of the ideas in Cosmos ecosystem, like mesh security, sort of go in a similar direction. But I think EigenLayer leveraged it well, this how it works in Ethereum and how they could use it. And also like the entire branding about this idea of restaking, that's pretty understandable for people what it actually does. And yeah, so pretty exciting to see where that will be going.
What else would you say? I mean, this podcast is typically focused on Cosmos, but since you guys are engaged in other ecosystems, what else do you think is interesting in the Ethereum system that Cosmos could get inspired by, or just like interesting developments that we should be paying attention to?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I do think that like Ethereum is obviously ahead in many ways like just being there first and sort of having like had some applications run there. Like, so, there was a DeFi ecosystem, there is the NFT ecosystem that's been there for a while. And I think, Cosmos actually already took some lessons from that, like being, even Osmosis being like one of the DEX that's in the Cosmos, and like sort of leveraging the benefits that you get from Cosmos, but also taking inspiration from what was there on Ethereum and sort of rebuilding that a bit. And I think there's other infrastructure that is still missing or being built in the Cosmos right now that was there in Ethereum. So yeah, including like NFTs, wallets, whatnot. But I think in some other senses, like some things are also there in Cosmos that Ethereum actually hasn't figured out yet, right? Like, so example, like IBC being sort of the main one. And overall, I think Ethereum moving a little bit into this app chain thesis, and like every layer 2 sort of building a SDK for others to build like a chain in their system, which is essentially the Cosmos SDK, which has like obviously much more years on its back and is much more mature than any of these OP stack or other things are at this point, which obviously might change in the future. But I think definitely there are places also where Cosmos is ahead. But I would say Ethereum having been early, but from the perspective of what I guess you were asking more, what is there right now, like innovative in Ethereum? There's not. I wouldn't actually say there's that much. Maybe like some sort of ZK stuff that I actually don't know enough about. But I think even in Cosmos there is stuff that there's people that are working on this in various degrees. So
now let me ask a different question. Like, so Ethereum has the liquidity, it has the OG status. Do you think Cosmos could become like the sort of premier off-ramp for protocols on Ethereum that want to stop competing for block space? They've become big enough, and they're like, so that's what happened with DYDX, right? They're like, okay, we're done with this. We want to move off and have our own block space. Do you think this is a one-off, or do you think this is like something that projects are really looking at? The bigger ones on Ethereum.
Yeah, I think definitely right now, like a lot of projects are looking at this, and I think you can. I mean, yeah, definitely also from the precedent of like DYDX switching, or just generally the market conditions almost, where I think, some people have struggled to create a business model on Ethereum being like just a dApp, and then the chain sort of becomes a solution to that, which I don't actually think is the right path, right? You sort of, I think, Sergey from Arxelar actually, we talked with him recently on Chorus Talks, which will be another format that people maybe can look at, which we're going to soon release. But he there talked about, and then later tweeted also about it, this model where, actually you want your own chain only when you have the product market fit, and you sort of need more customizability. You need like the sovereignty,
the block space,
the
activity. Right.
And so it's actually, there is a sort of path from like deploying just because you're an app developer and you just want to deploy on some shared space thing like Ethereum to see if you get traction, and then at some point maybe you become too big and you move to your own thing, and there's like sort of a path there that I could definitely see. But I would also say that many don't take this path and just start right away with a chain, and there's actually no users or nothing yet. So that's obviously then a very hard bootstrapping problem, because now you need to bootstrap your own security, but also the applications, everything, and that
attract the first users.
Not many people are able to like solve that many things at once. Yeah, I would definitely say that. So
I'll sign. All of that absolutely makes sense to me. So if we focus on back on Cosmos, and all those big projects are coming in, what are the most exciting projects that you think are coming to fruition right about now? Do you feel excited about anything you've seen around that's launching soon?
Yeah, I think definitely. I think it was, one of the first things, and I think many feel like that really kicked off the Cosmos like season is obviously Osmosis, and we're still very much bullish and excited about Osmosis and everything they're doing. I think Osmosis is one of the teams that is not afraid to, try out something new and sort of deviate a little bit from what Ethereum is doing, and definitely also leverage the Cosmos stack in a way that enables like unique things, including, for example, the MEV in protocol capture or things like that. So I definitely want to give a mention there. I think also DYDX obviously being like a really big application with a lot of users or much liquidity coming to Cosmos will definitely change the environment there, since now you'll just have more liquidity in the Cosmos ecosystem. So that's another one. And then what we're also very excited about is Kive just being like a sort of different use case, but very interesting and solving like big problems that many chains actually have. Like, where do you keep your state data? How do you like make sure it's there at all times? And then ultimately also like how do or applications can tap into that. So I think I'm pretty interested in this data perspective, since we have dealt with that, as I mentioned earlier, in the past too. And I think Kive is like one part of the puzzle there that could make it easier. We're actually working on some project with them to make state sync easier. So that's also like a product for validators that maybe don't want to trust like some random node that like shares their file on Discord in a zip file. Yeah, so making it like a little bit more decentralized and more trustworthy how you back state sync again. But then ultimately also I think like things about like analytics, like staking rewards and stuff will hopefully be solved with like some of these data middlewares. I think, for example, also Numia, who's a team that's sort of working on in this direction. I think I'm pretty excited about these. These are all like things that I think are necessary for really the Cosmos ecosystem to have like all the tooling available for the big adoption. Like things that are on Ethereum already with Dune or something that actually have helped, I think, a lot. Make it more visible what is happening on the chain and got more people into the ecosystem through that. So I think seeing Dune dashboards or Nansen, how the funds move, I think actually helped a lot the DeFi ecosystem growth, since more people understood actually what's happening just through the data. And I think a similar thing might be happening in Cosmos with the applications going live, but also the tooling maturing to sort of see where the activity is and build new applications on top of it. So
we've mentioned new and upcoming projects, and throughout the podcast, you talked about a lot of different security models. So one last question that I try to pose this question to everyone because I'm really interested in the answer is, what is going to be the future of these app chains? Like right now in Cosmos, there's a lot of experimentation going on. You've got Dimension with their roll apps. You've got Saga, which will launch you your own blockchain for your smart contract. You've got ICS, you've got Mesh Security, you've got Alliance Security. There are all these sort of shared, security models. What do you think is going to be a natural path for the new projects coming into the space? And what do you think drives the choice of these security models? Is it going to be like you're going to offer your users, hey, you can earn more yield on whatever, to attract liquidity, or is it going to be from the trying to avoid bootstrapping? A validator said, what's the what is the decision process?
Yeah, that's a very tough one. I think I think actually most of it's also getting confusing for like application developers. Like let's say I'm someone in Cosmos, like come along and now I have to like also make this choice, like where do I deploy? And I think it cannot be expected from them to like sort of make the best call there. So I think a lot will go from whoever they're connected with. I think it's a lot of like talking to people. It's a lot of like, what does this ecosystem offer you? So often, like you said, maybe it's just the token incentives like deploying, or like a grant you get from a certain ecosystem, or like the community aligns with your use case. Let's say you're deploying on, Polygon is sort of the example where this has worked very well, right? They're like the kings of BD in the blockchain ecosystem, and we're able to attract a lot of applications just through that BD work and sort of bringing people to the ecosystem, helping them, supporting them really like hands-on. And then that can like make the difference, right? So it's not just a technological solution. It's not just about this scales better or something like that. But it's much more, I think, actually about, what do I get from this ecosystem? Does their community want me there? How are the synergies there? And I think there's different models. So it depends on, where you start from. But I think naturally people will be, making their choices there, the way, given how they end up in the ecosystem, let's say you meet someone at a conference and then you sort of go with that, or like their BD team makes you a better offer than someone else. So I think there's a lot of that competition, and it's not purely the tech that matters in this case.
The tech merits, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So let's hope all those new app chains actually come to Cosmos, and we're going to have ourselves a growing ecosystem.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, yeah, like just from seeing now, yeah, there's definitely a lot of precedent from, yeah, the UIDX there. I think that's the biggest one, but also, yeah, generally a lot of validation generally of the Cosmos stack from various places. So I do think that a lot will happen there, and then you have these new architecture designs that will probably bring in even new places, like Saga is working already with a lot of projects that probably wouldn't have launched on the Cosmos ecosystem if it weren't for Saga's team to build like a whole incubation and like sort of process around it, which again I think is very important work that maybe is sometimes a bit overlooked by people that think it's all about the tech. Right. Yeah, there's definitely these two elements that I would definitely mention.
All right. Well, thanks very much for coming on the show, Felix. It was a great chat, and hope to have you on here some other time.
Yeah, thanks so much for hosting me, and yeah, hope to see people in Prague if I make it out there, and yeah, good luck at the conference.